Yesterday, Wichita Public Schools and the U.S. Department of Justice approved a settlement based on an investigation that started over 2 years ago. Superintendent Kelly Bielefeld will share some information, and then we will allow for your questions. And joining him today to answer some of those questions will be Dr. Vince Evans, Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services, Melissa Zimmerman, Senior Executive Director of the Office of Behavior Management, Support, and Oversight, Dr. William Polite, Director of Equity, Diversity, and Accountability, and Terry Moses, Division Director of Safety and Environmental Services. And now I welcome Superintendent Bielefeld to come up and talk more.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming today. Superintendent Kelly Bielefeld here, and want to just thank everyone for coming today. As of yesterday, the Department of Justice and the Wichita Public Schools agreed on a settlement for an investigation that started in the spring of 2022. Today, the DOJ and Wichita Public Schools are jointly releasing this settlement agreement regarding the investigation. The investigation and subsequent settlement that you will hear about today pertains to three things. 1, the use of seclusion and restraint practices. 2, racial disparities in the administration of school discipline. And 3, racial disparities in law enforcement referrals. The full agreement, as well as the jointly developed summary document, are available at our website, www.usd259.org/DOJ. Our subject matter experts will be available to take your questions here in a few moments. As we begin, I want to answer a question that I had early on in this process, and that was what prompted this investigation. The short answer is that we don't know. The DOJ has concluded let me back up. The DOJ has concluded similar investigations into pre-K through 12 districts across the nation, several of whom we have collaborated with to determine the most productive path forward through the investigation phase of this situation. We don't know what may have prompted the initial inquiry, but I can tell you that we can and we must create a more equitable school district, and we will do so by changing some of our practices and procedures going forward. It is my hope that our WPS community and Wichita as a whole will work together to support our young people in crisis, and to assure that we have systems, supports, and training in place to help all families build an amazing future for themselves and their families. We will help let me say that one again. We assure that we have systems, supports, and training in place to help all students build an amazing future for themselves and their families. I know that we will come out of this better and stronger than we were before, and give each and every one of our young people the innovative and impactful educational experience that they deserve. I recognize that what I have just shared with you has a broad reach in our district, and there are likely more questions than answers at this moment. We'll be glad to answer any clarifying questions that you have right now. And I have members of my team ready to answer specifics that might come up. So, at this point, are there any questions?
I guess the district has said as part of this agreement that they'll make some revisions to their current policy. Can you give us some details as to what some of those changes might look like going forward?
I'll call on Dr. Vince Evans, to answer some of that. I would also point you back to our website at usd259.org/DOJ. It has some bullet points there that are they're on the DOJ's press release and on ours too. But I'll let Vince answer some of the specific.
Thank you, Superintendent Bielefeld. To answer your question, I think that one significant change that you will see moving forward is to our district's code of conduct. And just to clarify on that, we do currently have a student code of conduct that exists within our district. It's existed for some time now. It's a brief document that's available to everyone on our website. But if you will go and read the settlement agreement, you will see that there are numerous criteria that the DOJ wants to see included within a revised student code of conduct. And I'll echo Superintendent Bielefeld in saying that I would encourage everyone to go to our website, read the settlement agreement in its entirety, and you can see exactly what those criteria are. Again, those are available at usd259.org/DOJ. The new code of conduct that we are going to need to create will improve consistency and equity in our district for how discipline is handled with our students. And just to give you a preview of how that's going to appear, in August of this school year, when staff return, we're going to begin collecting feedback from everyone Everyone meaning students, staff, parents, community members, anyone who's willing to participate. And we're going to decide what should be in our new student code of conduct, what shouldn't be in our new student code of conduct. And we'll work together to create a finalized draft of that document. When that's done, we will send it to the Department of Justice. It needs to be in their hands by October 15th of this coming school year. They will decide whether or not to accept it as written or whether or not they want to see revisions. But we do intend to roll out this new student code of conduct after we have developed it as a team on January 1st of 2025.
There's talk of creating a system of district-level monitoring of schools, administration, discipline. What does that look like in practice?
Would you like to?
Yep. And actually, I'm not going to handle it, but I'm going to introduce Melissa Zimmerman. Melissa has been with the district for a number of years, but is new to a position. It's a new office that we've created as a result of the investigation, the Office of Student. Well, I'll let you say the title of the office so I don't mess it up. But I'll let Melissa talk about kind of her role and the oversight role in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Bailfield. So our new office is called the Behavior Management Support and Oversight Office. We will have the opportunity to work directly with staff, with students, and with support staff and administrators when an emergency safety intervention occurs, or seclusion or restraint, to help with some additional pieces that we're going to be adding into our oversight piece of this. And so we'll be adding some parent debriefs, principal debriefs, student debriefs, and some oversight pieces where our office will go in and work directly with those people to help make sure that we've got de-escalation techniques involved. We've got best practices that are going to be trained over the course of this year, stuff like that.
Another provision is here is the elimination of seclusion. Can you speak to what the intent is usually when the district has in the past used seclusion as a disciplinary measure?
We do not use seclusion as a disciplinary measure. We use it as a last resort when students are unsafe. So that's what our policy says, and that's how we follow that. And you can find more information about that on our website as well.
What is
Seclusion is when a student is placed alone in a room, or they are under the assumption that they are not allowed to leave of free will.
And is it, I understand that this happened in the spring of 2022. Was there not an office within the school district that had oversight over discipline? I mean, the report, at least in the press release, is pretty damning as far as the information that is concerned of racial discrimination and referral to law enforcement, the calling in of security for certain people, difference in, there's a lot of things in this report that specifically talks about that. Was there not already an oversight, and why did it take the DOJ to come in and figure out that there was a problem?
So, and this is part of what makes it complicated. Your question, what is seclusion, I think is a valid one that probably a lot of community members have. Seclusions in our district are very rare. Less than 1% of students have ever been secluded. So it's not something that happens a lot in schools. And then there's a second part of this investigation, which has to what you just referred to. So the answer to the seclusion question is yes. We've been following the guidelines from the state of Kansas over the past few years that lay out emergency safety intervention, protocols and procedures and guidelines, and that's what we've been operating under. Some of these students have disabilities, some of them don't, that might be secluded. But we have had training and procedures in place for that. As far as the other piece of it, right? So the racial disproportionality piece of it, I think we look in the rearview mirror and we can see that there's maybe places that we need to do better. This investigation began, in 2022. It actually, some of the data that they pulled was from the 2021 school year. So, instead of looking in the rearview mirror, I prefer to look forward. Like I said, I do believe we can and we will be more equitable as a school district. I think this will help us. The timelines might be quick. In order for us to meet the agreement and the settlement. But I really feel like we will be better off as a district and can really be better off as a district moving forward by doing a better job of monitoring some of these things so we can intervene more quickly.
That you didn't answer the question. Was there an oversight person or a department within the school district prior to the DOJ's investigation, and were the findings what prompted this freedom?
The second question is yes. The first question, I would say it might have been siloed and pocketed, but no, there was not a central place. And I'm very excited for Melissa to lead this effort. I think it's something that will benefit the district regardless of the settlement agreement. But to answer your question, there was no central place for oversight for the entire district for all these areas.
And just to follow up, and I'll be finished with
No, you're good.
It was per building, so say like an administrator in a building would handle kind of the oversight of that, and there wasn't a central office.
And yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point that I do think is one of the requirements of the settlement, and one of the things that I believe will be a good thing for the district is that we will have a clear and consistent approach across the district to administering discipline. So it will be more centralized. It will be less, building driven. And that's part of what, Dr. Evans talked about the code of conduct. That's part of what, the agreement agrees to or looks towards is to have a code of conduct that all students across the district use, which is more equitable, right? I mean, it's a good thing for the district to head in that direction. So
Looking forward instead of backwards makes sense, but do you have any words for students or families who feel like they have experienced discrimination in Wichita schools?
Well, I mean, I think, I think this is it's a challenging and very complex topic, right? I think when it comes to seclusion, right, I think that's a particularly challenging situation. Melissa talked about that's not a disciplinary tactic, right? It's a last resort to keep everyone safe. When a student is so unregulated that all the de-escalation strategies have not worked, that's what we have used. The Department of Justice has said, not only to our district, but to districts all over the nation, that they believe that's a practice that is antiquated, that should not be used anymore. So as part of the agreement, we're agreeing to that. So I want to, assure parents and staff that, safety is of utmost importance for us as a school district, right? I mean, that's our primary job. It's part of our strategic plan to keep students and staff safe. So if students, have been secluded or were in a situation where that was required, we always hope to try to do best by the family and figure out a strategy to make sure that kid feels safe in the future. On the other side, right, there's two pieces to this that are very different and very complex. So, on the other side of it, I think it's real, and if Dr. Polite would want to come forward and speak for a second just about the community aspect of it. I was telling somebody this morning, when we were talking about what was to come out today. There's a lot of families, African American families in our district that probably have experienced it, right, or have felt that this is real, that there are differences between how discipline has been administered, and whether that is perception or reality. I think the point for me is that we can and will do better moving forward, right? Like that we do have a challenge in front of us that we can improve. We can help solve this and become more equitable as a school district. So I don't want to point fingers to the past or make any excuses for what's gone on before, but I do think, and the reason I would like Dr. Polite to come up is I do think it's bigger than just Wichita Public Schools, right? We see racial disproportionality in all sorts of areas of our life outside of just public education. So, would you mind just speaking to the community impact and how we might work together to improve?
Yep. And thank you,
Thank you.
Kelly, because greetings, everyone. That is definitely a part of our major plan as we move forward, is really engaging the community in these efforts. It's you can't have a one-size-fits-all for any solution like this, but to really begin to engage the community, we need our community partners, our faith-based communities, to come together to really work within our schools and with us and with our students and our families as well. And we're looking forward to moving forward and, like I say, get out of the rearview mirror and really see all of our students achieve all the potential that they're capable of, and not letting any of these type of barriers get in their way.
Could you please state your position? I'm sorry.
Executive Director of Equity, Diversity, and Accountability.
And I understand we don't want to look in the rearview mirror, but it did happen, that the report is out there.
Yep, no, without a doubt.
And I would think that, I mean, that as parents and people that have been in this community, I mean, it is a pretty, I mean, the report is very detailed. And I want to say something about what one of the attorney generals for the Civil Rights Division says, is that schools in our community should not be a place of fear or mistrust. And this is specific to Wichita Public Schools. Press release. This is not in general. And it also says that this agreement upholds our core principles of ending the school to prison pipeline and protecting the most vulnerable students against all forms of discrimination and segregation. Prior to this report, was the Wichita Public Schools engaging in a school to prison pipeline?
No. Directly, no. Do kids from our school district end up in jails and prisons? Yes. I always use three terms when I look at the term school to prison pipeline, because things do happen in schools that can contribute. The unfair disciplinary practices can contribute, but we also have to look at the community to prison pipeline as well. And many of the issues that many of our kids come through the door with really come from the community, and it ends up coming alive at the school. And some of the disciplinary practices, those are the things that Kelly and our team are talking about. How can we engage in such a way that it doesn't lead to that school to prison pipeline? But very good point, sir.
And I would like to, if I can piggyback on that. So because it's us, right? Because it just came out today, it does feel like this is specific to Wichita. This is what the Department of Justice has done to districts all across the nation over the past few years. So it was actually helpful and beneficial for us to reach out to Anchorage, for us to reach out to school districts in Virginia, school districts in Ohio, school districts. I didn't reach out to all of them, but I could rattle off more. Maryland. So we aren't alone in this type of effort by the DOJ. To use the mechanisms they have to get us to improve, right? And I do think ultimately we will improve through this, but it may feel like, Wichita's the district in the whole nation, but the reality is this has been fairly systematic, I think, from the Department of Justice to find districts like ours and kind of make examples of them, right, for the rest of the state to get us to improve. We need to improve, but we aren't alone in working through this. So.
Do you think that the DOJ targeted you guys
Well,
to make an example? I mean, to use Kansas, you know what I mean?
Like I said at the beginning, we don't know, right? We have no idea. Was obviously one of the first questions that the team asked was, well, where'd you get this, right? Where'd this come from? And they don't provide that information. So
Something that I'm wondering about is that something that the report had mentioned was that kids with behavioral needs were put into different facilities, and that those facilities were worse facilities, and that they didn't have qualified staff. Or proper furniture or decor. Talk to me about what was your vetting process for people who were hired at those facilities, and how did that happen?
you want to take? Yeah. I mean, I definitely push back on the idea that they're not qualified staff, but I wasn't part of kind of those determinations.
DOJ is certainly entitled to their opinion on that. I will tell you that everyone that works within any of our special day schools to serve students with emotional disabilities is qualified, is licensed. Those schools are furnished. They do have furniture, they do have et cetera. And Superintendent Bielefeld has been a champion for continuing to improve those facilities moving forward.
I've got a question to you.
Sure.
Kind of into the weeds. I like doing that. Last year, contract negotiations with teachers sort of hit a snag. And I know a DOJ investigation was invoked at that time, and the union was mentioning they wanted language preserved in the contract, giving teachers the ability, the right to say a student needs to leave the classroom. And there was talk about the district wanting that to be at the administrative level. I don't know how that was resolved. As far as the current teacher contract, I mean, the decision to actually remove a disruptive student from a classroom, who can do that?
So that remained in the teacher contract.
Okay.
Yeah, that provision didn't change. Yeah.
And will the teachers union be involved in the development of this new code of conduct?
Yeah, I mean, as Dr. Evans stated, we want all stakeholders at the table, including parents and students and community. But yeah, definitely, we'll be engaging with them. So, all right. Any other questions? Okay, appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.